but I was pretty heated last night. Very heated. When the Texans fired Lovie Smith. We'll start off with Lovie Smith, and we'll also discuss Cliff Kingsbury, who the Cardinals let go this morning. Keep in mind, an all season ago, they extended him to a 4-year deal. That doesn't always guarantee you job security. What the hell are the Texans doing? We all understood last offseason when they hired Lovie Smith, it probably wasn't the right guy to lead a rebuild and really enhance the development of this young team. But I felt like the Texans were finally making progress, headway, with some stability. The David Collier, sure, the hire was puzzling at first, and it ended after one season. What kind of franchise that's trying to build stability fires 2 head coaches in back-to-back seasons, minority head coaches, to really build up the idea they're a more diverse organization, they're more progressive? They aren't all of these things, all of these reports, all of these allegations they've had against them in recent seasons. That organization is quickly becoming the worst in football. And I have to admit, as somebody that's been pretty optimistic about the team itself, who would want to coach the Texans? You fire Lovie Smith, yeah, and you probably think, well, they've got a guy in mind who they'd want to bring in. The biggest name comes to mind easily. It's DeMeco Ryans, one of the best young defensive minds in the game. And who better to come in here and really take that Texans defense to the next level? If I'm DeMeco Ryans and the Texans want to hire me, after seeing them fire back-to-back minority head coaches in back-to-back seasons, knowing minority head coaches don't always get a second chance, why on earth would I consider going to Houston? If I'm Brian Flores, who was, let's be honest, unfairly done in Miami, I felt like he deserved more opportunity, how would I go to Houston? Those are probably the biggest names on the Texans' radar. Another name that's popped up, you guys were talking about this earlier in the year, was Josh McCown, a former assistant for a long time on the sidelines. I'm going to hit it to one of you two, either one of you that want to hit it. I'm sick and tired of the Texans BS. I'm really disappointed in this franchise because it doesn't sit right with me what they've done. And the reports came out a few days ago, before the lost number 1 overall pick, that Nick Caserio, their second-year GM, and Lovie are both in the hot seat. And Lovie talked after the game when they beat the Colts at a ridiculous play. That was unbelievable. How I'm not going to tell my guys to go out there and lose. They got a W, and they gave the Bears the first overall pick. The gift that keeps on giving to Chicago 16 years later. Where do you guys stand with Houston? Who would want to coach this team? Who would actually take this rebuild a step forward? Or are they just simply their own worst enemy?
I mean, exactly. I mean, I said it. What prestigious free agent head coach, what first year head coach would want this job? You wouldn't. It'd be a stain on your resume. This organ and when John said this organization that was trying to build stability, I just laughed in my head because what stability? They've shown no stability. I don't. I mean, David Culley was obviously not their first choice. Um, Lovie Smith was not their first choice. Their first choice was Josh McCown. They were going to sign Josh McCown last year before um, all the reports came out. I forget exactly what the reports were and stuff like that, but it had to do with, race. And they felt like, all right, well, let's hire Lovie Smith and he'll kind of be the scapegoat. And then we can, once this blows over, maybe we can go back to Josh McCown. So maybe they do bring Josh McCown in. And uh, I don't know. This job is just not a job that I would want if I'm if I'm DeMeco Ryans, if I'm Eric Bieniemy, if I'm Byron Leftwich, if I'm Dan Quinn, Kellen Moore, just to name a few. Why would you go here? So yeah, there's no upside to see, and I feel bad for the players, but the organization just sucks. The Houston Texans organization sucks. It sucked from the day it was created, and no offense to David Carr, but that was their first ever draft pick, and we saw how that played out. So this organization has always just been, I mean, there were a couple of year stretch in 2010, 2011, 12 where they were a playoff team, but you knew that they weren't going to go anywhere. And then they got Deshaun Watson. It kind of fell into their lap, to be honest with you. And they fumbled the bag over and over with him. They made that trade that John likes to allude to all the time of getting David Johnson for DeAndre Hopkins, one of the stupidest moves in NFL history, and just continue to shoot themselves in the foot. So I don't know what to say. This team, this organization is a clown show.
I swear to you, that was exactly what popped up in my mind. I thought to myself, Javini and Clowney style, living up to the name.
You know, the craziest thing about it is when you think of the Houston Texans, like I wouldn't even say that they're this putrid organization of failure. I'm not going to say that because those Matt Schaub led teams with Andre Johnson and Arian Foster, you know, I get what you mean, Brandon, where we knew that they weren't going to make a run in the playoffs, but they had some good teams with some successful runs. They
They're
just
a
so
failure, Justin. Sorry to cut, but they've been around since 2002, I believe. They've been a complete and utter failure. Like, let's
and
just call it what it is. They've never been even close to sniffing a Super Bowl.
see, but I won't even say they've never been close because
They,
not too long ago, and this is why I'm going to say
when were they close? They were
what
never
an
close.
extreme fall from grace for the Houston Texans was they had a multiple score lead in Kansas City against the Chiefs with Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins on that team. They had that game.
We're opening up the scars for Texans fans.
But you know what? I have to because it's the facts that this team wasn't too far removed
Was
from
that the divisional
playing an
round?
AFC title game
Was that
against the Tennessee Titans
that
team
was
that
a
you
divisional?
probably would have. Yeah, the divisional game.
After they beat Buffalo.
You probably would have favored them against the Titans that year. So this is a team not too far removed from Super Bowl expectations.
That was 1 year though, out of
Well, the thing
20
is,
years. I mean, come on.
had not all the stuff that happened with Deshaun Watson happened, we'd be looking at this team a little differently had they not traded a DeAndre Hopkins. Just a couple of things that could have went their way.
Not went their way. This isn't like a fumble or a bounce. This is decisions that the organization made and shot themselves in the foot,
Well,
Justin.
that's my the Deshaun Watson thing.
No,
was
I'm talking about the Hopkins thing.
The Hopkins things, yeah, but even with that, Deshaun Watson put up MVP numbers with that.
I know, and I'm agreeing with you, but what I'm saying is they shot them. That's not like they fumbled.
You're
the bag
100% right.
on
I'm not
Hopkins.
knocking that.
They did that. The Deshaun Watson thing, yes, that was an unfortunate situation that nobody foresaw. But other than that, I mean,
no, I'm not. I'm not arguing that. I'm saying that this team wasn't too far removed from Super Bowl expectations. They were a quarterback away at one point, and they had the quarterback. They just like you said, they shot themselves in the foot. It's pretty sad to see that. And right now, no direction there with the quarterback. You don't know if Davis Mills is the guy. I think we can all sit here and say he is not the guy. They have what, the number 2 overall pick?
Now they're the number 2 overall pick. And when you say
they
shot
have
themselves in the foot,
they have the Browns pick too, right, in the first
number
round.
12.
Okay, so okay, go ahead.
When you said, Justin, and you as well, Brennan, that the Texans have shot themselves in the foot, what you really mean is Bill O'Brien, a power-hungry and somewhat, maybe the word would be like self-interested individual, narcissistic, thought that he could win without the second coming of Andre Johnson for that franchise. He thought they didn't need to pay him. And it was really a short-sighted move with no foresight beyond that. It was somebody not in the right mind to actually make those operational decisions. So that's what we really mean. And now with Nick Caserio, I mean, this is 3 coaches in 3 years. We're about to go on a 4th.
You would think, coming from an organization that had so much stability.
No, you wouldn't, Justin. Come on. You should know that of all of New England fans. You know that people from New England do not succeed outside of New England because they think that they can take the Patriot way to other organizations, not knowing that they themselves do not have the cachet that a Bill Belichick built for 20 years.
BC.
Yo.
There's no exception to that rule, my friend.
Mike Vrabel?
Well, he's one, a former player, but there's another head coach who's quickly become an exception to that. Brian Dable. Longtime assistant. Spent multiple
But he also coached for a bunch of other teams before he got
But New England was the only team where he had stability. He was fired again and again. He had seasons in Cleveland and Miami and Kansas City. It wasn't until he went back to New England and he really studied under Bill Belichick and documented some of the things that Belichick was teaching him. He was able to really builds the connections. Now he brings in Wink Martindale, one of the best DCs in football.
Yeah.
That Giants defense has been phenomenal this year. It's a
But I
testament.
think we all like when I say that, I think we meet like you know what I mean, like directly coming from New England. Because yes, Brian Daboll, but again, people remember him more as the offensive coordinator for those Buffalo Bills teams and building Josh Allen to the MVP candidate that you guys believe so. So yes, you're right there, but also, there were some couple pit stops in between there. But yeah, Nick Caserio, I don't know. GM, I'm gonna be completely honest. Never heard of that guy. Never heard of that guy all my years of
Really?
Well, he's
Patriots.
going to be the
Never,
Texans GM for the next
never. Because you want to know why? Because Bill Belichick makes all the decisions. We all should know that. Like as a
Yeah,
Patriot, I know
we
that.
know that, but I mean, to me at least, I've heard of him plenty.
No, I didn't even know we had a GM. I thought Belichick was GM head coach. That's what I've been told this entire time because he makes all the decisions. Everything goes through him. So, I mean, Nick Caserio, okay, you did a good job of just being a guy who sat there and listened to Bill Belichick. Great. You obviously didn't absorb enough knowledge because you're doing a terrible job.
Well, okay, so the issue with Houston is not necessarily the draft. The Kenyon Martin pick, or sorry, the Kenyon Green pick for them, an offensive guard, he wasn't a hit in year one at all. He was not very good. But the Jalen Petrie pick in the second round, he had a really good rookie season, one of the best
But
rookie
this
DBs.
is
And then
a
the Derek
two-part
Stingley
thing,
pick's
Bob.
boom or bust. I
This
felt
is
like
a two-part
Caserio did a
thing,
fine job in the draft. John
That's
Michie,
fine,
who
but
of
but
course wasn't able to play as a rookie, prayers up to him.
Yeah.
They didn't have a whole lot of fortune.
it's a two-part thing though. You're also failing on the head coaching thing, and head coaching we all know is way more important in football than it is in basketball. It's about 50%. Like you need a great head coach to go far in this league. So, and he's failing on that part. You can be
Well,
hitting on
honestly, I
everything,
kind of feel
but
like it's designed that way.
yeah, I mean,
I'm starting to
obviously
think they're looking for that scapegoat. They're just flunking out. They're okay with losing out
they
and
also
getting
been
back in
denied. I
the
mean,
draft.
they haven't been able to get their probably top picks because nobody wants to go there. I mean, like I said, David Culley and Lovie Smith were not their first options. Dude, they were gonna go with Josh McCown last year, a guy whose only job on his resume was to be an assistant on a high school team.
But don't get it twisted. There was an athletic article about him where, yeah, Josh McCown, he was not an NFL assistant, but when you spend that much time around the NFL as a quarterback, as a backup,
Come
and
on,
you
John.
learn that much
That's
from
Yeah,
over a
you start to
dozen
coach.
it's the
franchises,
Steve
you
Nash
are an
look though
assistant.
too. That's the Steve Nash look. It
Not
doesn't look
necessarily.
good. It doesn't look good.
McCown, I think, is actually, while it's not a good look at all, someone that can realistically become a head coach and succeed from all the experience he has.
Yeah.
It's not an
And
orthodox
people
approach.
have said
But
it.
he's got to climb the ladder like everybody else.
I agree with you.
You have to. Like this is
Sometimes it's not even like that. Sometimes it's not what you know, but it's who you know. Some people don't have to climb the
100%.
ladder, and unfortunately, that's just the world. So I could see him getting that job. I mean, since his days with the Jets, people have been talking about him as a potential head coach. So something about him and his personality. He's a leader of men, and maybe he may be the next guy for that job. But regardless, yeah, Houston isn't the most desirable place on the planet. They have some good draft picks, like you mentioned. Hopefully, we get to see Mechie next year if he's healthy and well, and see how those picks play out. But this is a big year. You got the second pick in the draft, and what you said, the 12th,
Yeah, from Cleveland. God sent for
and
them, man.
yeah, so you got to hit on those. You've got to hit on those, and you know what? Maybe we're looking at Nick Casario's job in the first 3 years. But if you know what I'd love to see is organizations actually stick with something for longer than 3 years. So the fact that, it was either Lovey or him, they stuck with the GM and kind of trusting the process here to see where it goes. Maybe next year the Texans may surprise you. I mean, they showed later in the season they had a little bit of dog in them, taking the Kansas City Chiefs going blow for blow with them
Hmm.
and the Cowboys as well. Hey, you never know.
And one more thing, you said before Davis Mills, probably not the guy in Houston. I feel Davis Mills is pretty talented, but he's on a team with very little structure, not the best play call. And I feel like in some ways he's been held back. So for the Texans in the drafts, they're going to pick number 2. I think Chicago is going to look to move back, but the defensive-oriented head coach, I think they go defense. That still allows them to go Bryce Young at number 2. I think Bryce Young's going to be a really good prospect or a really good quarterback at the pro level. It's going to be pretty interesting to see what happens these next couple of months. Because if they draft Bryce Young, I think the next head coach in Houston will be Josh McCown. And while I was very critical of him early in the show, I can see that pathway working because, well, Josh McCown, this piece by Dan Pompei, I think it was this September. While many people think he's jumping the line, I don't really think Josh McCown necessarily is, with all the experience and all the head coaches he's played for. When you're a backup for that long in the NFL, you need to build survival skills, and those apply directly to head coach. That's why oftentimes role players make the best coaches.